In the heart of a vast empire, aboard a warship that could swallow cities whole, a young human woman steps into a world where one mistake could mean her end. She has been warned to never speak to the Emperor's hidden son, a dragon prince who has never flown and never breathed fire. But when fate throws them together, a single choice will shatter every rule and ignite a moment that could change both their lives forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The transport shuttle trembled as it approached the Imperial dreadnought known as the Obsidian Crown. Its massive frame filled the viewport, stretching for miles, its dark metal surface glistening under the cold light of distant stars. Thousands of tiny lights dotted its hull, like fragments of constellations trapped in steel. Lyra Maven pressed her hand against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. She had never seen anything so vast, so alive with silent power. The ship was a city in space, a fortress that carried the weight of an empire. She clutched the strap of her small canvas bag, the only personal item she had been allowed to bring from Earth Colony 12. Inside were a few clothes and a single photograph. A calm but mechanical voice filled the shuttle cabin. Human female designation Maven. Prepare for entry protocol. The words were cold, stripped of emotion, yet they made her heart beat faster. She straightened her posture, smoothing the front of her plain gray uniform. They had told her she was fortunate to be chosen for service aboard the Emperor's flagship. Few humans were ever granted such a position. The pay was enough to send home to her family, and that was all that mattered. Still, she could not ignore the unease curling in her stomach. The shuttle connected with a deep metallic thud. The airlock doors slid open, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls were made of a dark alloy that seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something older, something that hinted at creatures who had ruled the skies long before humans learned to walk. Waiting at the end of the ramp was a tall figure. His skin was a pale green blue, smooth and faintly wet. His large black eyes unblinking. He wore a long coat of deep crimson, marked with the insignia of the Imperial Administration. "I am Administrator Vorin," he said, his voice flowing like water over stone. "You will follow me. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact with any Draconian. Do not enter restricted areas. The penalty for disobedience is immediate removal from the vessel." Lyra nodded silently and stepped forward. Her boots made soft echoes against the floor as she followed him through the winding corridors. They passed beings of many shapes and sizes. Insectoid engineers clung to the walls, their limbs moving in quick, precise motions. Towering guards with plated armor stood at intersections, their eyes scanning every passerby. In the distance, she caught glimpses of wings and scales, flashes of movement that made her pulse quicken. The lower levels of the ship were where the servants lived and worked. Here, the artificial gravity was heavier, and the air recyclers hummed constantly. Vorin led her into a small chamber where a group of workers had gathered. Most were of alien species she did not recognize, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Listen carefully," Vorin said, his gaze fixed on her. "You have been assigned to the Imperial Wing. This is both an honor and a responsibility." A holographic map appeared in the center of the room, showing the layout of the Imperial Wing. Your duties will include cleaning, maintenance, and food preparation for non-Draconian staff. Under no circumstances are you to interact with Prince Kalen. The name stirred a ripple of whispers among the workers. Lyra hesitated, then asked quietly, "Who is Prince Kalen?" The room fell silent. Every gaze turned toward her. Voron's throat swelled slightly, a sign of irritation. The prince is the emperor's son. He is young and has certain difficulties. That is all you need to know. After the briefing, Lyra was shown to her quarters. It was a narrow room with a single bunk, a small storage unit, and no window. She placed her bag on the bed and carefully removed the photograph from its hidden pocket. It showed her mid-flight, during a zero-gravity gymnastics routine, taken before the accident that ended her career. She stared at it for a moment before tucking it away again. Her first shift began at what the ship system called Dawn. She pushed a cleaning cart through the polished corridors, the wheels whispering against the floor. The other workers passed her without much notice, though a few exchanged quiet remarks about humans. In the staff dining hall, a tall insectoid named Sarek spoke loudly to a group nearby. "Humans are so fragile," he said, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "No armor, no extra organs. It is a wonder they survive at all." Another worker, a pale-skinned amphibian, added, "They even need long hours of sleep. How inefficient." ... Lyra kept her eyes on her meal, a bland protein paste, and said nothing. She had learned long ago that dignity was not about answering every insult. It was about knowing your own worth. On her third day, she was assigned to clean the observation deck. The wide glass panels revealed the endless stretch of space, stars scattered like diamonds across black velvet. It was there she saw him for the first time. Prince Kalen sat in a hovering chair. His wings folded. "You must listen," the nurse said firmly. "Your father expects you to know these histories." "What does it matter?" Kalen replied quietly. "I will never fly like them. I will never breathe fire." The nurse began to speak again, but Kalen turned away. "Leave me alone." Lyra realized she had stopped working, her gaze locked on the young prince. For a brief moment, his eyes met hers. In that instant, she saw something she recognized all too well. The weight of being told you could never be what you dreamed. She quickly returned to her task, but the image of those golden eyes stayed with her. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was not the last time their paths would cross. Lyra Maven settled into the rhythm of her new life aboard the Obsidian Crown. Each day began with the same quiet hum of the ship's engines and the same long walk through the polished corridors of the Imperial Wing. She kept her head down, pushing her cleaning cart, careful to follow every rule Administrator Voron had given her. The other workers rarely spoke to her, except in passing. Some ignored her completely, while others made small remarks about humans being slow or fragile. She had learned to let the words pass over her like water over stone. Her focus was on her duties and the credits she could send home to her family. On the third morning of her second week, she was assigned to clean the observation deck again. The deck was a vast space with towering glass panels that revealed the endless stretch of space beyond. Stars glittered in the distance, and the faint glow of a nearby nebula painted the darkness in soft shades of blue and violet. It was there she saw him again, Prince Kalen. He sat in a hovering mobility cradle, his small frame wrapped in a dark cloak that matched the deep blue of his scales. The light from the nebula caught the edges of those scales, making them shimmer faintly. His wings were folded tightly against his back, unmoving. His golden eyes were fixed on the stars, but there was no spark in them. A draconian nurse stood beside him, reading from a glowing book that projected images of great dragon warriors. The nurse's voice was steady and formal, speaking of battles fought and victories won. Kalen did not look at the book. His claws tapped softly against the armrest of his cradle, a slow, steady rhythm that sounded almost like longing. "You must listen," the nurse said firmly. "Your father expects you to know these histories. What does it matter?" Kalen replied, in a quiet voice. I will never fly like them. I will never breathe fire. The nurse hesitated, then began reading again, but Kalen turned his gaze back to the stars. Leave me alone, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. ... Lyra realized he had stopped moving. Her hands rested on the handle of her cleaning cart, her eyes locked on the young prince. For a brief moment, his gaze shifted and met hers. In that instant, she saw something she recognized deep in his golden eyes, the weight of being told you could never be what you dreamed. She quickly looked away and resumed her work, but the image of him stayed in her mind. Later that day, in the staff dining hall, she overheard two guards speaking in low voices. The Emperor's greatest shame, one said, a dragon who cannot fly, cannot breathe fire. Some say it is a curse from the old gods, the other replied. Others say it is a defect in his bloodline. His mother died when he hatched. The Emperor keeps him hidden away. Lyra kept her eyes on her meal, but her hands tightened around the edge of her tray. She knew what it was like to have your body betray you. She knew the hollow ache of losing the thing that once defined you. The next day, she was given a new assignment. She was to clean the prince's private learning chamber. The chamber was quiet when she entered. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books and holographic archives. In the center of the room, Kalen sat in his cradle, staring at a projection of the galaxy. He did not look at her when she began cleaning. She moved quietly, dusting the shelves and wiping the smooth surfaces. But as she worked, she felt his gaze on her. You are human, he said suddenly. Lyra paused, then nodded. Yes. What is it like, he asked, to move without pain, to run, to jump? She hesitated, unsure if she should answer, but something in his voice made her speak. It feels like freedom, she said softly, like the world is open and you can go anywhere. He was silent for a moment, then looked back at the galaxy projection. I have never felt that. She wanted to say more, but the rules echoed in her mind. Still, as she left the chamber, she knew something had shifted. Over the next few days, she found herself assigned to his chambers more often. Each time, their conversations grew a little longer. She told him small stories about Earth, about the open skies and the feeling of wind on your face. He listened closely, his eyes brighter than before. One afternoon, she noticed him trying to stretch his wings. The movements were small and stiff, but they were movements nonetheless. She encouraged him quietly, showing him simple exercises she remembered from her own training days. Kalen began to try them each time she visited. His claws no longer tapped in boredom, but in anticipation. Yet, in the back of her mind, Lyra knew they were breaking the unspoken rule. If Administrator Voren discovered their conversations, the consequences would be swift. Still, she could not bring herself to stop. There was something in Kalen's determination, something in the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of the sky, that made her believe he could do more than anyone thought possible. And somewhere deep inside, she began to wonder if helping him might also help her find the part of herself she thought she had lost forever. Lyra Maven stood outside the prince's private learning chamber, her cleaning cart parked beside her. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a quiet room filled with shelves of books, glowing data screens, and the faint scent of polished metal. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the space. Prince Kalen sat near the center, his mobility cradle hovering a few feet above the floor. A projection of the galaxy rotated slowly before him, casting shifting light across his midnight blue scales. His wings remained folded, his gaze fixed on the stars in the hologram. Lyra began her work in silence, dusting the shelves and wiping down the smooth surfaces. She had been told many times to avoid speaking to him, but the memory of his golden eyes from the observation deck lingered in her mind. After several minutes, Kalen's voice broke the stillness. "You are human," he said. Lyra paused, her cloth in hand. "Yes," she replied quietly. "What is it like," he asked, "to move without pain, to run, to jump?" She hesitated. The rules were clear, but there was something in his tone that felt fragile, like a thread that might break if ignored. "It feels like freedom," she said softly. "Like the world is open and you can go anywhere." Kalen's eyes shifted toward her. "I have never felt that," he said. She wanted to offer comfort, but the weight of the unspoken rule pressed against her thoughts. Still, she found herself speaking again. "I used to be a zero-gravity acrobat," she told him. "I could twist and turn in the air, feel the rush of movement all around me. It was the closest thing to flying." "What happened?" he asked. "An accident," she said simply. "I was told I would never perform again." Kalen looked back at the galaxy projection. "Then you know what it is like to lose something you were meant to have." The truth in his words struck her deeply. She nodded, though he was not looking at her. "Yes, I do." Over the next few days, Lyra found herself assigned to his chamber more often. Each time, their conversations grew a little longer. She told him about Earth's skies, about the way clouds drifted, and the way wind could lift your hair. She described the sound of waves crashing against a shore, and the feeling of standing on a high cliff with the world stretching out below. Kalen listened intently, his golden eyes brighter than before. Sometimes he asked questions about human life. Other times he simply listened, as if her words painted pictures he had never seen. One afternoon, she noticed him shifting in his cradle. His wings twitched slightly, the movement small but deliberate. "Are you trying to move them?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "The healers tell me it is pointless, but I want to try." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I can show you some simple stretches. They might help." He tilted his head. "Will you?" She nodded. Slowly, she demonstrated small motions with her arms, mimicking the way wings might extend and fold. Kalen followed her lead, his movements stiff at first, but gradually smoother. They practiced for several minutes until the sound of approaching footsteps made her step back quickly. Administrator Vorin entered the room, his unblinking eyes sweeping over them. "Is everything in order?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra said, keeping her voice steady. "Just cleaning." Vorin's gaze lingered on her for a moment before he turned and left. The door closed behind him, and Lyra let out a slow breath. "You could get in trouble," Kalen said. "I know," she replied, "but some rules are worth breaking." In the days that followed, their secret routine continued. Lyra would clean while Kalen practiced small wing stretches. She encouraged him to hold his wings open for longer each time, praising his progress. One day, Kalen began to share more about his life. He spoke of the endless medical treatments, the constant reminders of what he could not do, and the way the Emperor rarely visited him. He admitted that he often felt invisible, hidden away from the rest of the Empire. Lyra listened without judgment. She told him that being seen was not always about who looked at you, but about who truly understood you. One evening, as she prepared to leave his chamber, Kalen said quietly, "You are the first person who talks to me like I am more than my weakness." "You are," she replied. "You are more than they will ever see." As the door closed behind her, Lyra knew the line between duty and defiance had been crossed. She had broken the unspoken rule, and there was no going back. What she did not know was that the moment of true testing was coming. Soon, both she and Kaelin would face a challenge that would demand more courage than either had ever known. The day began like any other aboard the Obsidian Crown. The corridors hummed with the steady rhythm of the ship's engines, and the artificial lights shifted to mimic the soft glow of morning. Lyra Maven pushed her cleaning cart through the Imperial wing, her mind already on the tasks ahead. She had grown used to the routine, but there was always a quiet anticipation when she knew she would see Prince Kaelin. When she entered his private chamber, she found him practicing the wing stretches she had shown him. His movements were still slow, but there was more strength in them now. His golden eyes brightened when he saw her. "You came early," he said. "I thought we could try something new today," she replied. Before they could begin, a sudden shudder ran through the floor. The lights flickered, and a deep alarm echoed through the corridors. Kaelin's cradle shifted slightly in the air, its stabilizers humming unevenly. "What is happening?" Kaelin asked, his voice tense. Lyra glanced toward the door. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Meteor storm detected. Impact shields at 70%. All personnel secure positions." The chamber shook again, harder this time. A loud crash sounded from somewhere nearby, and the wall panels trembled. Lyra's instincts sharpened. She had been through emergencies before, but never on a ship this size. "Stay here," she told him, moving toward the door. Before she could reach it, a violent jolt threw her off balance. The cradle lurched sideways, its hover field flickering. Kaelin gripped the armrests, his wings pressed tightly against his back. "The observation deck window shield has been damaged," the intercom announced. "Emergency shutters deploying." Lyra's heart pounded. If the shutters closed before Kaelin was moved, he could be trapped in a dangerous section. "Hold on," she said, rushing to his side. The cradle's controls were unresponsive. Sparks flickered from its base. She knew she could not push it fast enough to reach safety in time. "You have to get out," she told him. "I cannot," he said, his voice shaking. "I have never." "Yes, you can," she interrupted. "Remember what we practiced. Wings out. Focus on the movement." The ship shook again, and a section of the ceiling collapsed near the far wall. The sound of tearing metal filled the air. Kaelin's eyes were wide with fear, but Lyra's steady gaze held him. "You can do this," she said firmly. Slowly, he unfolded his wings. They trembled, but they were stronger than before. "Now," she said, guiding him toward the open space between them and the doorway. He hesitated, then pushed off from the cradle. For a moment, he dropped slightly, his wings flaring awkwardly. Then, with a sudden surge, they caught the air. He glided forward, unsteady but moving. Lyra ran alongside him, ready to catch him if he fell. Debris fell around them, and the sound of the shutters closing grew louder. "Just a little farther," she urged. Kaelin's wings beat, once, twice, and he lifted higher. They reached the doorway just as the emergency shutters sealed the observation deck behind them. They collapsed in the corridor, both breathing hard. Kaelin's eyes were wide, but this time with something new, exhilaration. "I flew," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "You did," Lyra replied, smiling despite the chaos around them. Guards and crew members rushed past, securing the area. Administrator Vorin appeared, his unblinking eyes scanning the scene. His gaze lingered on Kaelin, then shifted to Lyra. "What happened?" he asked. "Meteor strike," she said. "The cradle failed. He flew to safety." Vorin's expression did not change, but he gave a short nod. "The Emperor will be informed." Later, in the quiet of the prince's chamber, Kaelin sat on the edge of his cradle, his wings still partially open.